We appreciate you coming over and joining us as well. We have a great, fun speaker today, but we'll go ahead and get started. Fresh Start Mornings is sponsored and brought to you by the Cherokee Office of Economic Development. Under Cherokee Office of Economic Development, we work to improve the economy for Cherokee County, the metro area. One of our programs is Fresh Start Cherokee. That's our initiative to help our small business here throughout the county. And underneath that, we have a couple different programs. We work with small business owners with our event today, Fresh Start Morning, that gives people with either a concept idea or if they've been working on their business for under 5 years, they can come and share their story and get feedback from the audience. We also do informational panels that is educational for our entrepreneurs here. We have the circuit, on the first Wednesday of the month. These are held at the circuit. That's our partnership with the City of Woodstock and Chattahoochee Tech, where we have co-working space and programming that we host there, and Circle of Friends Coffee. Nick, you're here, Circle of Friends Coffee. They provide the coffee for our Fresh Start Mornings event on the first Wednesday as well. If you're a growing business that's looking to scale, we have our North Atlanta Venture Mentoring Service. That is an opportunity that you can apply for and get paired up with a group of seasoned professionals to help grow your business. We have Jim Bolger here. He's one of our NAV mentors. Thank you for giving back to the community. And then coming soon, this summer, we're going to launch a new program under the Kauffman Foundation's Fast Track program. That will be for business owners, whether you are a new entrepreneur or maybe you've been in business for 2 to 3 years and you're wanting to really refine your business acumen. It's going to be about a 10-week program where you come in and you evaluate your business. Is this a business or is it a hobby? Let's develop a business plan, do some market research, look at your financials, do financial projections, and get you ready to go to the bank for a loan if you need it. So more information will be coming soon about the Fast Track program. Huge shout out to our community partners. We could not do this event without all of our community partners. We work closely with the Cherokee County office along with our city folks, Belinda in Canton, Sylvia within Woodstock, Aaron with Holly Springs. We also work closely with Chris. He's their planning and zoning person, Ball Ground, and then City of Waleska. And then our community partners also, Reformation Brewery, huge shout out, thank you for letting us host here. Circle of Friends we mentioned, they provide the coffee on the first Wednesday of the month. Reformation did provide Alma coffee that's in the corner. Please drink up and have coffee. Bronson was really disappointing, he could not join us today. He's under the weather, but he typically comes out and does the photography. And then Corridor Publishing, Gerald, our speaker. He also helps with the videography. So thank you, everybody. And let's see, next one. Really excited. Tomorrow at Yanmar, we are hosting our 4th annual Cherokee Film Summit. Molly Mercer in our office has been working hard to bring together our panel of speakers. We're working with the students in Cherokee County schools. They'll be with us from 9 to 2 in the morning, and then in the evening we turn it around. We have an adult session with programming there. So if you want to attend, please scan this QR code right here. You can get 30% off your ticket price. So tickets, sales will continue. You can even pay at the door if you would like to attend. I'm going to go back here. I skipped one part of community sponsors. I'm really excited to announce one of our new volunteers for Fresh Start Mornings. You might have seen him last summer with 1 Million Cups, but Justin Deweese is going to start helping us out with MCing these events because I hate the microphone. So thank you, Justin. He's going to facilitate, he's going to announce Gerald, our speaker, and help facilitate the Q&A a little bit. So thank you, Justin, and why don't you come on over.
I do not mind the microphone. I think it's cool how we're all wired a different way and how different people come together to put on an event, even such as this. So I'm Justin Deweese. I work with Guardian Insurance Solutions. It's good to be here this morning. I've got to hang out with Gerald on a couple different occasions, one in a little small group area. He's a very witty, clever guy. If you've been around Gerald for a minute, he's a man maybe few words, but very wise and strategic words when he speaks. And so I'm excited to hear him today. You can hear a little bit about what he's doing and hear a little bit more about where we're publishing. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, let's welcome Mr. Gerald Griffith.
Okay, a few words. Wow. I don't know if I've ever had that description before. But anyway, thanks for everybody who came out. And as they mentioned, I'm presenting about Portal Publishing. And I'm excited about that because, as most of you know, I've done a few different things, different capacities while living in the community. And this is one of the latest projects that I'm working on. I think the clicker. Oh, okay. I moved to the area with my family from Virginia back in 2009. I have 3 kids, wife, no pets or anything, but 3 kids is suffice for now. And combat veteran, military, about 8 years. And for the last 10 years, most of you know me as having been the executive producer of a conference that I did down near the Atlanta airport, which I ran for about 10 years for professional voice actors. And that was quite an experience, which started shortly after I moved to the area. First year, did about 150 people there. And so did this past year with a peak of about close to 1,000 people and spanned 2 hotels. So needless to say, what you know when you start an event of 100 people and what you need to know to run an event of 1,000 people is a very, very different animal with a lot of sleepless nights in between if you've ever planned events. But I enjoy living in the area. Met a lot of great people. A lot of you here today are people that I've met over the years through 1 Million Cups or even some of the small group stuff that we did before that. But let's talk about Portal Publishing because after I finished doing the event last year, there was a little bit of a space where people at the business meetings that continued to come to meetings and said, so what's next? And I didn't try to answer that question. Because one of the things I learned after getting out of the military is that you need to allow some space to decompress from whatever it was you were doing. Because when you jump quickly into the next thing, sometimes there's a lot of residual from your prior thing, and so you need that space. So when I finished doing the conference of 10 years, especially having navigated through 2 years of COVID, managing 800 individual business owners who had signed up for that event that got canceled 10 days before, 20, it left you a little drained, right? So thankfully, I understood enough having come out of the military to allow some space and not have an answer to that question of what's next. I felt like it was okay to float for a moment and just let it all soak in, much to the chagrin of my wife and other people who thought, no, you need to go get a job, right? So that's life. But Portal Publishing came about from the idea that even having lived in this community for years, on a regular basis, I'm surprised and I'm continually discovering the community. Either it's a place to eat or it's an activity. I find out about most activities after they've happened, when I see them in the newspaper or reference. I'm like, hey, I wish I knew about that. I wish there was a way to find out. And sometimes I'm looking and people say, well, go to Watertown, go to Analyst site, check the county site, check the city site. Before you know it, you'd be checking so many sites that you'd be signed up for so many mailing lists and you still would not find out everything that happens in this area. But during those COVID times, one of the things that came up to me was, what can you do to actually bridge the gap a little bit to a lot of people like myself who don't often know what happens beyond the tree line, as I call it, to actually have some exposure to that. So I initially looked and I said, well, what's out there currently? And I did discover that there were a few different publications and things, and primarily they're what I call general purpose, which means that when you look at one, you're not really sure what's in it other than what's on the cover, and you flip through it and you find out about different things. And they're great resources, by the way. I've been in a couple of them with other projects. But I didn't want to do a city thing, because I felt like we're not really just a city. I live in Woodstock, but I go to Canton, I go to Ashford, I go to Kennesaw. And then there were already people doing the city level. Then what came next was, well, what about at the county level? And probably a week after I had that thought, Cherokee launched, and so I was like, oh man, well, there's somebody speaking to the county. And so that left me at a quandary. I was like, well, I'm not a neighborhood, I'm not a city, I'm not at the county level. What is it that ties all this stuff together? And one day I was, like the description goes, the light came on. What do we all share? We all share a common thread that we call I-575. We go up and down it all the time, and most of us would agree that we don't just do things in Woodstock. We don't just do things in Canton. We don't just do things anywhere. We tend to go up and down what I call the corridor. And so it's referenced in some of the highway planning and stuff, let's say Northeast Corridor. So I just shortened it to be the corridor. And the corridor is an area that spans from Marietta all the way up to Ball Ground. And I'll actually talk a little bit more about that. But corridor publishing came about from the idea that you could put together a series of resources and services that spoke to very specific audiences within the corridor. So that's the big picture, and we'll talk about some specifics of it here in a second. So here's a map representing the corridor. It covers 13 zip codes, all the way down into Marietta, south of Marietta Square, just a little bit. And it's only weird looking down there because of how the zip code is set up. It's not a weird design mechanism of my own creation, but the 30060 has kind of a boot shape to it. But what's interesting about this is, again, it's 575, and if you research the highway system, you'll find some fascinating things about the numbers. For instance, 75 is the main corridor that goes north and south for us. Well, 575 indicates the 5 is an odd number, which means it does not reconnect to anything. If you have an even number like 285, 295, 685, an even number means that it connects to something on the other end. If you see an odd number like 185, 575, it means that if you take that road and drive to the end, you will not reconnect to anything. If you take 575 to the end, what happens?
558.
Yeah, it turns into a little two-lane road down there somewhere, right? You'll end up probably in a campground somewhere at the far end of it, right? So that was one of the interesting parts. And 75, the last two digits always indicates the main road that's associated with. So it is a spur of 75. That's what the number represents. Anybody know what the first section of 575 to be built was? Where it stopped? It wasn't all built at once. I can tell you, from 79 to 87. Where do you think the first part of it stopped? Highway 92. It only went to Highway 92, and that was around early 80s, and then it was extended to its present length by the end of 1987. So it's an interesting thing, and within that, there are over 500,000 people within those 13 zip codes that are covered there. The average family size just over 3 people. I'm not sure how the 0.25 works for tax reasons, but maybe that's a pet to account for a smaller number or something like that. Household income, just over 80,000. Average home value back in 21 at least was 262. And these zip codes vary a lot. There's some that are much less than the 262. There are some that are much higher. But that's probably true of most areas overall. So let's talk a little more about corridor publishing. So corridor publishing in and of itself is an umbrella organization. Think of it along the lines of Turner Broadcasting. A little smaller, obviously, but the same general idea, where Turner Broadcasting has a number of brands that it manages. If you were to talk about CNN, it is a part of the Turner Broadcasting Network, but it is not the Turner Broadcasting Network. So when you think about corridor publishing, think of it in much the same relationship where it represents a number of different brand entities, not the other way around. So each brand has its own identity, it has its own social media, its own email, its own contacts, its own management platforms, everything. Now, why does this matter? One thing I learned having sold my conference was that almost by accident, I had identified the conference under a separate name. So my main company was VoiceOver City, the conference was Rio Atlanta. Most people didn't even know about VoiceOver City. They only knew Rio Atlanta. And here it is, people are coming from all around the world to be a part of a conference for Rio Atlanta, but have no idea who the parent organization is. Now that became a very advantageous thing because when it came time to sell, you could separate the brand without killing the company. Does that make sense? So having learned from that, when I put together Corridor Publishing, I modeled the same thing so that each particular asset is a standalone. So at some point, if someone comes and they say, well, hey, you know, what are you doing with that part? We'd really like to do some things. You can completely manage a relationship related to that brand without taking anything away from the main company. Okay. So I have a website. We're part of the Top Chamber and the Cherokee Chamber of Commerce. A lot more fun being a part of it when you're really locally based than it was before, where all of my work was in Atlanta somewhere or global in nature. So here are the brands that I kind of started with. Some are more close, a little closer to fruition than others. But in general, that's what they are. They all, as I mentioned before, they all have their own brand, identity, and things like that. Corridor Publishing being at the top, Taste of 575, which we'll talk about a little more here in a moment. The printing, I'll tell you how that fits into it all. And then there'll be an outdoors version of things, the arts, and the sounds. So each of those have a very specific audience. Each of those have a very specific advertising base that I hope to attract into them, and things of that nature. So when you see them on the shelf, eventually, the point being that if you're looking for outdoors something, you gravitate toward the one with the boat or fishing or hiking or something on it. If you're looking for a place to eat, you look for the taste of. They're individual entities, but all managed up under the same brand. So printing. All the material you see here, including the banners, were all printed in-house. I won't say how much of it was printed this morning before I came here, but a lot of it. Everything except the cookies. I did not print the stuff on the cookies. I couldn't quite get it to feed through my tray. I'll have to contact the manufacturer about, obviously, a defect, right? But all of those things are printed. And the printing came about as a result of looking into doing the Taste of 575 magazine. Now, those of you who talked to me, you know that it's a huge investment, and I've done that. But it was an important one because I felt like if I go to a restaurant or go somewhere to tell them about this concept I have, I need to put something in their hand that is most reflective of what the end product will be. Anyone can show you something on the screen, but to have put in the extra work and investment to put something in their hand is a totally different thing. And so far, the reception of that has been really good. So please take one with you. Look through it. I'd love some feedback and stuff on it. The calendar came about as well over the last few days. It's like, one of the concepts that I wanted to work with. It's easy to customize all these things. So if you're someone who has a business and you're like looking for that special thing to send out any time of year, really, because you'll notice that my calendar starts in March. I feel the need to have you rehash January, February, because most of us went by so fast, probably don't remember much of it anyway. But as long as I don't try to do one for weather predictions, I think I'll be on the safe side. So you can take a calendar as well and enjoy that. But any of the basic printing stuff, where it gets a little interesting for me is I really try not to just make it like a random copy shop thing where you just throw something out there. I look at it, I try to understand what you're trying to do with it, where necessary, depending on what they've designed in. I'll work with the individual to customize it or tweak it. Sometimes people have an idea, they just don't necessarily have the skill or the eye to put it all together. And so I'd rather take the time to work with someone than say, hey, just upload a file or push a button and I'll just give you what you asked for. A lot of times people don't know what to ask for is. So that's the printing element of it. The sounds, I'm going to go a little bit backwards here because these, I don't have as much on right now. The sounds, 575 will be all about entertainment and things that are happening in the area, because you may not realize that there's a river event that Camp puts on during the summer, but they also have First Fridays in the summer, and then Woodstock has the amphitheater stuff happening, and there's several things that happen in Kennesaw and Akron and Marietta that probably don't get advertised up here because they're in a different county. Well, the corridor for me doesn't have county boundaries or city boundaries. It's all the corridor. So everything you see in my publications will generally always focus on what's close to home. It may not always be super, super close like in your neighborhood, but it'll be somewhere that's drivable without you spending half a day on the road to get there. The Arts on 575, along the same lines as theater, performing, and visual arts. There'll be things about gallery openings, different schedules. Even if there's something happening at a school with a play, you may find it in there, but you know that when you see it or you pick it up or you see the digital edition of it, that it's something to do with the arts in this area. And you'd be surprised at how many things happen in this area that are of an artistic nature. Outdoors, this was a lot of fun. When I talk to people about this, usually, especially the guys, they get really excited, like, yeah, I want to be in that one. But even at the chamber, someone who was part of the chamber said they actually maintain a budget for tourism and promoting the parks and things like that in the area. So they were really excited about something that was specifically focused on outdoors. And so that's your biking, hiking, kayaking, fishing, boating, hunting. You pick it up, you know that it's all about something to get you outside of the house. Right? So taste of, the one that's in front of you. This one came out. This is actually a lot of fun. It's a lot more expensive than I thought because it turns out, eating out a lot really adds up. But it's my obligation to test these places, right? At least that's what I tell my wife. I'm not sure she buys it, but anyway, I have to try. So the cool part about this is that it's not only a print magazine. It also has a mobile app and there's a website, so it's a digital version. But within the app, if you were to pull it up on either your Android or Apple, there's an app you can install and you can search the restaurants that are in this area. It'll show you where they're located. You can filter it by cuisine type or hours, whether it's lunch or dinner or things like that. You can tap on it. It'll ask you want directions to it. You can go there, you're able to leave a review and things of that nature. So it's a lot of fun. It's the one that I'm in the process of launching now. The print edition will come out for the May, June. And right now we're in the digital phase of putting it out and building it up. So again, there's copies on your table. Feel free to take a look at those. And this is more about there being the mobile app, things of that nature, which is actually works pretty good. So I pull it up, and it'll tell you based on where you are at that moment, what's near you, based on location. So if I were to search from here versus searching from home, I'll get two different lists, filtered by what's closest to me. There's someone holding a mock-up of it. We'll start off with about 8,000 to 10,000 copies. I have a distribution company that will actually be putting it out in a lot of doctors' offices, dentist offices, hospitals, things of that nature. And then we'll go from there. Expect by the end of the year, so we'll probably do about 30,000 to 40,000 copies across the entire area. The advantage from an advertising standpoint is that there's not a focus on crowding as many ads in as you can. Some publications I look through and you see that where there's one slice of content and then there's 5,000 ads all around it, and they're all mixed together. So all of the magazines will have a theme to them, as I mentioned before, and the ads should be consistent with that theme, meaning that me talking about the new restaurant that just opened will not be just opposed to the funeral home. It just doesn't quite jive together, right? The assumptions you could make are never good. Like how they end up at the funeral home, right? So that's the fun thing there. It's bi-monthly, so it has a longer shelf life to it. But the best part about it is, when I've talked to restaurant owners, one of the reasons they don't advertise as much as they'd like to is because there aren't a lot of clear vehicles to do so that cover a larger area. They could do a Woodstock, they could do a Canton, and with one publication you could do a Woodstock, but then there's a Town Laker, which is still Woodstock, but you have to get two publications just to cover all of Woodstock, which means you're layering on your cost. Whereas when they advertise through Taste of 575, they cover an entire area, which is probably a lot of where they're going to draw their customers from anyway, right? So that's the great part about that. That brings us to Q&A.
Awesome, great job. So we'll probably not hear the name Corridor Publishing a lot. We're really going to hear the name of these magazines a lot. That's what most people are going to be more familiar with. Is that correct?
The brands. And one thing I did want to mention specifically about the stuff you see on the table before I forget. This particular card you see about the wine dinner. This is a very real event. This is not a sample card. This is a real event. With Letitia and Vincent, we just opened Siesta Vie, a French place over in downtown Canton. Letitia is here, one of the owners. And we're doing a special event over there on the 24th of April. It's going to be a wine dinner. You'll have a chance to learn more about them, and they'll talk about the meal and some very exciting things. I went over the menu and I'm like, okay, this is going to be a very interesting experience. There's no country fried chicken on there, nothing. It's like, wow, okay, going high class. But I'm looking forward to it, and I'd like to invite all of you to register, come out, and if another, just come by yourself, be a part of that. I think it'll be a really exciting thing, but it's indicative of the types of events that Corridor Coalition will be a part of going forward, and I really appreciate them opening up their restaurant to allow us to come in and have a wonderful meal and some wine and learn more about the food, taste some different food, and come together as a community. So it'll be exciting. So definitely take one of these, take an extra one, share it, and you'll also see a few social media posts and things about it as well.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. This was a lot of information, but you did it in such a very well done, really good job with the presentation. What questions do we have? Any questions on any of the publications or a little bit behind the business?
So are you asking the restaurants that are participating to pay an advertising fee, or how is that structured?
When I do an event at their location, there's usually a co-branding. Depends on how they want to structure it. In some cases, it may be totally done on my side. It may be a co-branded event, or it may be an event for them to highlight something they're doing. So it really just depends on the restaurant, what we're trying to accomplish.
My husband runs Copeland's, so you might want to go over there.
On which one?
Copeland's.
Yeah.
I didn't see it on your app.
It is not.
That
So
was the question. Wow.
yeah.
I was like, how is that showing up or not showing up? And it's funny because it is like one of the larger volume restaurants, but you don't see a lot. Like, I think I was looking for something the other day, and I noticed, I'm like, where's Copeland's on this? Like, it's such a big, well-known restaurant, maybe they just don't think they need to.
No,
I don't know, it was weird.
So
But I noticed it with yours, and I noticed it in my other experience, and I was like, where the heck is Copeland's? Like, everybody knows Copeland's. So it was kind of funny.
So here's the mindset behind that, right? Is there's nothing against Copeland's at all. I go there and I enjoy going there. I enjoy going to Longhorns, but you'll notice they're not in there. I go to Marlowe's Tavern is not in there. If I looked at it and said, what are organizations that are least likely to need additional exposure? They've been around a long time. They're a brand. So they probably build a nice marketing budget into what they participate in. I'm happy to have them, but there's only so much space of what I can do. And in some cases, if they have multiple locations, that's one of the reasons. Because, for instance, Longhorn has a location here in Canton, they have a location in Woodside, they have a location in Southside. Do I just list one, or do I list all three? So I don't list any of them. Because it's more value to the restaurant who's Letitia and Vincent could just open up their place to get the exposure, whereas Copeland's is on a prime piece of real estate on a busy road with a huge sign. It's nothing against Copeland's. I certainly hope they would take out a full-page ad with me, right? But it's just when I measure out how many things I can fit in, I do kind of get a little biased towards people who may never get that chance to get any exposure outside of Woodstock or outside of the immediate area for the limited budget that they work with.
Well, I'm trying to nudge my husband into opening his own place, so.
We could advertise for that too.
We need backers. He's got all of the information he needs. We need a backer. So that's my quest. He doesn't know I'm doing this either.
I didn't hear a thing.
He has no idea.
Who else? Any other questions for Gerald? Sir Stone.
Oh, now I'm nervous.
So I'm operating under the impression that you can do smaller runs in your printing work than maybe a typical printer. Is that accurate?
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the things that, as I talk to people, they kind of get excited about because they can do full projects. That's actually why the printing got added. Because I went to a copy shop to run off a copy of one of these samples, and it was nearly $14 for one copy. So imagine trying to go out and prospect, and you want to do 50 or 60 of these a month, because when you go visit someone, you want to leave a couple of copies with them. Well, it was more expensive for me to look at the prospect of doing samples than it was for me to lease commercial printing stuff and have installed in my basement every month. But the short runs are definitely a nice part of it. Even with these, what we're able to do is custom brand the cover and the center section so that if you're a restaurant and you want to have a version that highlights your restaurant, even though it has other listings in it, then we can make you the centerfold. The entire center page will be all about you and your restaurant, and on the cover it has your logo. But it can apply to anybody and everything. Just like with the calendar, you may say, hey, I just need 25, but I don't want to pay $20 a pop or whatever it is for a custom one. Yeah, we can certainly do small.
Good deal. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Now I'm nervous. It's like payback for all the questions I asked over the years.
All good, brother. I'm so proud of you. Help the audience understand the full circle for a startup restaurant that has no printed menu, no digital, no advertising, in a sense of what could Corridor really bring all that together into doing for them?
Well, I don't know the answer to all of that because I don't own a restaurant. But from a general business standpoint, one of the biggest challenges is how to cultivate a presence beyond the people that you talk to individually. So what I see most often is someone will have a really nice business, and this has happened with me visiting restaurants as well. So the restaurant itself is really nice. You walk in, and the menu is taped to the counter on a piece of copy paper. Well, there's an inconsistency there, right? Because everything communicates something about how you feel about your business. It's like if someone is dressed really nice, but they didn't put on deodorant. So it's like, oh man, you get all this really nice stuff, but I don't want to stand next to you. So I think when it comes to branding, that everything communicates a little bit about you. So when you mail out things or when you print your cards, like when someone hands you a card and it's got a scratch out on it. It's like, wow, I didn't just reprint the card. It's like, oh, I just bought those. Like, yeah, but it doesn't look good. It was worth the $20 for you to just get another batch done with the right phone number on it and for you to scribble out one and put it on there. So when it comes to me, I really try to understand where they are and where they're trying to go. And then ask them questions. Because a lot of times what they lack is a perspective outside of their own. They're so close to it that even with me, it's like I'm so close to a lot of things that it's hard to maintain perspective. So you need that trusted circle of friends. That's why I send out stuff to you or different ones and say, hey, what are your thoughts? How does this strike you? Because you need eyeballs that are not yours to give you honest feedback. And sometimes they come and they ask me things with that, not just restaurants, but different people. So what do you think? Not good. It's not hurting anybody's feelings, but it's just to have them reconsider certain elements of it. That it's nothing I have here is about making me feel good. What'll make me feel good is to see traction, and to see growth, and to see the revenue starts to come in because it serves the customer and it helps them achieve their goal. Now, where they get thrown off sometimes in that discussion is when someone's talking to me about putting together their package, I said, there's one agreement we have to have, is that this is not about you. And personally, I don't need you to like it. I need it to work. Because that's what you're after, right? You're after growth, you're after people coming in and eating, you're after whatever it is. You personally feeling like this is something I want to put a frame on the wall, that's not the goal. And usually they kind of get that. And so we then work from that premise that the goal is to find the best way to achieve what it is you want to achieve. And so I do that through a number of ways. Look at the website, we'll look at the cards, we'll look at the menus, we'll look at the signage, we'll look at where they're putting it, why and why not, kind of stuff. But it's really a 360 approach. Sometimes you can do a lot with them, sometimes you can't. It just depends. As realtors, you have to watch them.
Now here's where you really need to be nervous.
Gerald, I love the idea, that. We've had some conversations. Is there ever a possibility that you could combine some of these elements together to produce something that is a combination of maybe taste or the outdoors or, combining some of this stuff on the corridor as one deliverable, if that makes sense?
Well, I'll give you a visual like this to your question. If you were to take a bicycle wheel and you think of a hub and spoke, don't all the hubs work together? They intersect, right? Because they share a common hub. Everything you see here shares that common hub with Corridor Publishing. So absolutely, the outdoors can be co-branded with the taste of. We could have an outdoors barbecue, right? Out at the lake. So there's a boat sponsor from the marina, and so we're talking about boats, but we got Joe out there with a smoker, and we're sharing some brisket, or restaurants coming out, and they're a part of that. So even though they're standalone, they also integrate. That's why they're different. You don't see like taste of and then a light taste of and a heavy taste of. It's all just taste of. So you can go anywhere in that space. You can tie it with other things, or you can have it completely separate. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any plans to do like a Taste of 575 event?
Yeah, so actually, if you look on the page in the magazine sample you have right before that regional menu, you'll see it mentions a restaurant week.
Okay.
Now, my view of doing the restaurant week is a little different. I personally went to 3 Taste of events. I was sponsored at 3 Taste of events last year. They're all great for what they are. But the question I was always left with was, if a restaurant doesn't get everything they're going to get out of that one day, where does it leave them? Where does it leave them? If the weather sucks that one day and the turnout was horrible, where does it leave them? Because they've already invested all the extra money, the staffing, the tent, the rental, everything. It's a crapshoot. You know, I was out there and there were some parts of it I was like, man, it was dead. It was foggy, it was cold, we were in Kennesaw, I was just looking for something warm to drink, and there was very few people there. So I'm thinking, like, what are these other people? What are the chances that they got a lot out of it? And so my vision was a little different. It's more along the lines of have it be a month where you identify certain days of the week where you're still at your restaurant. If Copeland's is a part of it, they know that they can go there Sunday through Thursday and ask for the taste of menu. And that's a special menu you give them, right? But that runs every Sunday through Thursday, whatever the date may be, right? It runs every Sunday through Thursday for the entire month of August. And so the benefit, in my mind at least, to that is this area is spread out where the place where Restaurant Week started was New York. People hop in a cab and go everywhere there. So the idea of driving and stuff is very different for someone in a close city environment versus here. If you did a day here, how far are you likely to go, and how likely are you to go to more than one place? I want people to have a chance to go to your place, but if I only have that one day with you or that 1 week, the likelihood in this area is a lot lower. Especially you're down on Barrett Parkway. If I live in Canton, that's a bit of a hike to go. But if I know that it's every week for 4 weeks, for these certain days, I'm more likely to say, oh, I've been wanting to check out Copeland. I see their menu in there. Man, we got to check that out. We're going to go next week. And so now you have 4 chances for someone to come be a part of that. And then we can incentivize it through the app where if they visit multiple places, there's like a reward system where they can just scan a barcode and then that reward can come through us, because the goal is to encourage more getting out to try different places, particularly places they haven't done before. So if they want to participate in that, they can't go to the same place over and over again because the code only works once. They're gone. So if they've gone to Copeland's once, they scan their code, they go to CSV, and they scan their code, and they need 2 more, right? So they got to go check out 2 more places to qualify for whatever the prize incentive is. So those are things that are strictly done from my side to encourage more activity that impacts your stuff.
I've got a question real quick. So do you have any future ideas? One that comes to my head is sports at 575. Like, you know, is there a local lacrosse or football or scholarships, things like that? And those magazines may already exist where you may not need that, but do you see a need for something like that?
Well, the first part of what your question was, I'm never short on ideas. Time and ability to execute is a different part of that, but I have considered sports. That's why sports is not natively a part of outdoors. The challenge with sports is that it moves at a very, very fast pace.
Right, yeah.
And its relevance is how close the actual data is to the actual event that happened, right? So there may be some aspect of it later, but at this point, because of the nature of sports and what's involved with tracking everything from where do you start, right? Do you start with CYFA stuff? Or is it just high school stuff? Or is it college stuff? And the next thing you know, it's a lot, but it's not ruled out completely. But remember that everything is a separate thing. So even as it grows and there's a sales team and there's a marketing team and everything, all of those would be separate teams, ideally. Right? So if there's people that come along and they're like, hey man, we're gonna do something sports and here's what I bring to the table, I don't rule it out. Same like people have asked about putting something together for people who do crafting and things like that to help them get more exposure, because they do Etsy stuff, but they kind of struggle with that, and some have tried to have like a space over here at the mill, but they don't do enough business to justify being in there. So like, how do I get more visibility for my craft stuff without having to run a big Etsy store all the time and different things? So I've had people ask about that. I've thought about doing a publication along those lines where think of the page and the print or digital as kind of their storefront. And so while they're marketing individually, I'm marketing collectively that says, here are a bunch of crafters in the corridor. And then eventually you could have a small event where I coordinate the event space and then they can just show up. But it's reasonable for them to do that in an indoor environment where someone's managed the administration of the event versus them trying to be at the flea market where it's a rainy day, but all their stuff is subject to moisture, so they don't want to get out there, and it goes by so fast. So I try to think more collectively about this stuff I work on.
That's good. Anybody else? Any other questions for Gerald?
Come on, bring it. Is that even got one? No, I said yes. I get asked my questions.
Great, great. Hey, let's give Gerald a round of applause. You can tell you did not put this together overnight. This has been something in the making for a while. Let me turn back over to Amanda to close us out today.
Thank you, Gerald, so much. We really enjoyed your presentation and wish you the best of luck in this. I know you put a lot of thought into it, and it's exciting. You've done a great job. Thank you. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate you today, and look forward to you hosting more events in Fresh Start Mornings. Let's see. Here is Gerald's contact information. I'm sure you have your cards that are out on the tables as well if anybody wants to reach Gerald. Next up, you know what? I think this date is wrong. Apologies. We are skipping the first Wednesday in April because of the spring break. We know a lot of people will be going out of town. So I think the third Wednesday might be April 15th? 19th. So apologies for that wrong date. So it'll be the third Wednesday of the month in April. Sweeties Cafe and Ice Cream Bar. I don't know if you guys know Cheryl a lot, but she had her cottage license where she was going to farmers markets and selling products, and she, I believe, purchased the ice cream shop here at the mill. And so now she's combining the two businesses at the mill. So it'll be fun to hear from her on the third Wednesday in April. And then please follow us at Startup Cherokee, Fresh Start Cherokee, to keep updates so you know what's going on, not just with Fresh Start Mornings, but other events that we have going on at the circuits. Again, Film Summit is tomorrow. We're really excited about it. You can scan the QR code to get your ticket, or come see Hannah and I. We can also tell you how to get your tickets. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you next month. So